welcome to the Pastors Podcast Season 2, part of the Jesus Culture Podcast Network. I'm assuming because I'm a guy who goes in order and starts from left to right, ascending, that you've started not only at episode 1 of Season 2, but you went back and listened to Season 1.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm just assuming.
And you're still listening.
Yeah, you're still listening. If you're still listening, God bless you. And if
you didn't, this episode's going to help you go back and figure it out.
There's an extra jewel that you get in your crown one day if you're this far in. But we're just happy to have you. Listen, we're pastors. This is what we're doing. Our day job is just helping lead and build thriving communities in our city that try to reach people and impact the city around us. And so that's what we're doing. We've been through the same pandemic as everybody else, and even before the pandemic, walking through the same issues.
That's right.
And our heart is really just to come alongside pastors, church leaders, those that are in the trenches building church, and hopefully encourage you, hopefully inspire you, but also hopefully challenge you, equip you, get you to grow. And that's really what we're going to be talking about on this episode is the issue of growth, both a culture of growth, personal growth. Just how do you kind of create that around? I just see a lot of leaders that are stuck. A lot of leaders that aren't actually growing. And I won't theologically get into this right now, but the whole concept of sanctification is growth. The whole concept of sanctification is that you don't look the same next year that you look this year, that ultimately the Holy Spirit is at work in your life, so that you'll look more like Jesus next year than you do this year, so that the fruits of the Spirit are manifesting at a greiter level. So my point is this: the Christian life is a life of growth. Like it's from glory to glory, strength to strength, it's moving forward. And so hopefully, and there's a lot of reasons I think why we kind of get stuck or stop or whatever else, and we'll talk about those things. But excited. You guys don't fully know the guest that we're bringing on right now, but he has been a real huge influence and impact, not only in my own personal life, but in Jesus culture. He's come in as a consultant and a trainer with our teams. He runs an organization, which I'm talking about, called Integris, which is working with faith-based nonprofits, churches, leaders, all that type of stuff, and has really been instrumental in helping set our culture. And so we're excited. I try to share this with you guys. As a pastor, I'm just bringing people that have impacted us.
That we trust.
And we're doing that. So Lyle Wells, Lyle, it is great to have you on the podcast with us today. Thanks for joining the Pastors Podcast.
Banning, what a pleasure. I didn't get the memo on the black shirt, but maybe next time. Next time I can look as good as you guys.
That's all right.
Funny.
You are in a little bit more of a professional setting than we are, obviously. Yes. And so this is how it works. Although Lyle, he works right now, and I'm going to have you explain what Integris is, but was also a pastor at a church. When I first met him, he was actually doing both, pastoring a church in Florida. So he's been in the trenches as well, understands what that is. Lyle, can you just give a quick synopsis, snapshot, 30,000 view of kind of who you are and what you're doing, and in particular, what you're doing with churches? I think give a little bit of your kind of business card to pastors that are listening right now.
Well, Banning, I love your heart for growth, and that was really the genesis of Integris. When I planted our church in Tampa, I was almost 40 years old. I had been principal at one of the best high schools in America. I'd been a head college basketball coach and a college athletic director, and I thought, how hard could it be? And I mean, pastoring, it took every single tool I had in my toolkit. And I remember going to a church growth conference and there being all these church planners who were 27 in skinny jeans that had a journal because they had spent a month in a coffee shop dreaming. And I thought, we're sending these guys to battle with butter knives. And who really shepherds the shepherds? Who encourages the encourager? Who equips the equipper? Who comforts the comforters? And that's the heart of Integris. We really want to come alongside pastors and their teams and help them align their behaviors with their desired outcomes. It's what I did as a public educator. It's what I did as a college basketball coach. It's what I do as a pastor, is really help understand where people want to go, and then let's align our behaviors to get there.
It's incredible.
Yeah, already. Well, there you go. You can find him, sign up.
I was that 27-year-old in skinny jeans and a moleskin journal going off to battle with a butter knife. So you're speaking to my heart right now. I'm a little older, but I
totally.
Oh man!
And there were quite a few men that were coaches in your life that helped you not die on the battlefield. That's what it is.
I need them.
We all need it. I will say this as we jump into what Lyle's talking about. Lyle has been, there's so many different terms, mentors, coach, consultants, trainers, whatever they are and whatever you call them. There's a handful in my life. I would absolutely not just be where I'm at, but still be here. Without these guys that have come and challenged me, and many of them, and we'll maybe talk about this, but I think you need people in your life who are honest, who love you and encourage you, but just, also are slap you around sometimes.
Yeah.
I just had this call. I called a spiritual father of mine, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And I'm like, dude, this just happened, and this was hard. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you complaining? Get up. You got a call in your life. Go get to work. And I'm like, can you just feel sorry for me for a moment? Where's your empathy? Do you know, it's not even on your spiritual gift list, empathy. But we all need that, We need people that are also helping us, equipping us. And so we have, hopefully we all have that in our life. But
we desperately need it.
We desperately need it. So Lyle, here we go. You got a whole bunch of pastors. I'm going to say tens of thousands. Can I say that confidently?
With faith.
With faith.
We declare tens of thousands of pastors will listen to this. This is my season 2.
This is my evangelistic number.
Maybe 30.
Maybe 30. There's a good 20 listening. But pastors that are sitting right now listening to this thing, one of the things I would just say is this. I really believe that this has been a season of revealing and invitation.
Yeah.
And inviting. And what I mean by that is I think the Lord has really revealed some things. I think he's revealed what we put our trust in that didn't hold up. I think he's revealed some fears. I think he's revealed some holes in our leadership. I think he's revealed some holes in our emotional well-being. But in the midst of that revealing, there's also an invitation that he's extended to go deeper, to grow, to get better. And ultimately, I think that if we're going to go where we're supposed to go, if we're going to navigate where we're supposed to navigate, if we're going to do what God's called us to do, then we have to respond to that invitation, and it really is around growth. Lyle, this would be my first question, and we're going to have a conversation, so we just go back and forth. Feel free to interrupt. But Lyle, why is this issue of growth, like you actually said this. I'm going to steal his quote. That the minute you stop growing, you're disqualified from leadership. Why is that issue of growth so important when it comes to leadership? And why would you say that you're disqualified if you no longer are growing? Why is that issue of growth so important for us to keep at the forefront as leaders?
Well, I think, Banning, the first thing you have to look at is, the fact that we're talking about leadership implies that there are followers. And so the two reasons that a failure to grow disqualifies you from leadership is number one, what kind of steward of your followers are you if you're unwilling to grow? I think that's the first thing. It's a stewardship issue. The second thing that I would say is that it's also a revelation of our character. I read this quote recently, and I can't remember who to attribute it to, but they said character is revealed by the amount of truth that you're willing to hear. And so, if you want to be a high character leader, then you've got to be willing to hear truth, and you've got to be willing to apply that truth in the crucible of your own growth. When you think about great leaders, Phil, they have high credibility. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. They can deliver an outcome, but they also have high influence. People are willing to follow them. People want to follow them. In fact, I think great leaders are easy to follow. How many times in Scripture does Jesus say, "Follow me," and people leave at great cost whatever they're doing to follow Jesus? Jesus was easy to follow because he was high credibility and high influence. So all of that builds this case for we need to be men and women committed to intentional growth on a very consistent basis.
I already have so many thoughts, and I think I think one of the things.
Me too.
Yeah,
this is what we say about Lyle. You're going to get to know Phil and all them, but Phil, first of all, this is our joke: is that he's deeply concerned.
Always deeply concerned.
Phil is a feeler who's deeply concerned about the state of something. So he's got a lot of things.
So
go ahead.
I one of the things that I think, and I would imagine we're in alignment. So feel free to speak back if we're not. And I think
he will.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is that when we think about growth, obviously what happens for a lot of pastors and leaders is they immediately go to external growth, right? People are deeply concerned about external growth. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be to some extent, but I think what you're saying, and I think this is what matters, is we've handed over the conversation of growth to external things, and we're not actually asking the question about internal growth. And I believe it's where the conversation matters, because if we would give ourselves to internal growth, I believe it would manifest in the right ways in external growth. But often we're consumed by external growth, and sometimes for very right reasons, and sometimes for very ego-driven and selfish reasons. And I think what I hear, one of the things I hear, what I love about you and what I love about your saying is because in this conversation of growth, it's ultimately a conversation starting with me as a leader and me as a follower of Jesus. And I think if we could turn the conversation of growth back towards ourselves and the internal development of becoming more like Christ and more of the leaders He's called us to be, I think it would actually shape a lot of the external growth that we're longing for in the right way. And so can I just ask, one, if there's anything you would disagree with in that, I would love for you to talk back to that. But then two, why is it that when we talk about growth, we all lean towards the outside when the conversation of what we desperately need is on the inside?
You're talking about growing like numbers and growing like however we're measuring growth in some way.
Because I can even guarantee when everybody, the first time the word growth was said on this podcast, 99% of pastors thought about the size of their church, not the size of their soul.
But it's because of the church growth movement.
Right.
That many of us were birthed out of in our teens or in our 20s. So even the concept of church growth is one that makes me cringe a bit because of what it means. But
you can manage a program that grows but still be dysfunctional and have a horrible home life. Lyle, what do you say to this?
Absolutely. Phil, I agree with everything that you're saying. The first answer is, why do people focus on external growth? It's easy. It's less threatening. I can say we need better social media. We need better graphics on our screens. Our parking lot's too small. I mean, those aren't personal. We don't have to look inside for that. So it's easier. I think a lot of pastors are insecure and they fight that insecurity. And so being challenged, banning the conversation that you had with your spiritual mentor that basically said, go and do your job. I love that. But you know what? You've got to have some substance to hear that and receive that. The second thing I would say is, Phil, there's a paradigm that we miss, that personal growth is not personal. Because, Phil, when you invest in becoming more like Jesus, when you invest in becoming a more compassionate and a more empathetic and a more strategic leader, it blesses every life you touch. And so, church growth, Nate, first thing I would say, you want to grow the church, grow the leader. Like, let's get to work on the leader, and then we'll see what fruit gets produced around them. So I'm agreeing with everything you say, but I think at the root of it is a lot of insecurity, because to take a hard look at yourself and actually own it is a difficult thing.
So even in your saying that, Lyle, I would love to hear, like, you're with pastors. You're speaking to this one of insecurity. To you, when you're looking at the issues that you're seeing most predominantly in pastors' lives that need growth, what are you seeing? Like, what are the real issues that you're seeing in pastors' lives?
I think there's three things. Their first pushback will be, I don't have time. I think time management is a stupid thing that smart people say. I think we have to think about behavior management. We can't manage time. I mean, I'm looking at my clock right now. It's 25 after the hour, and in 10 minutes, it's going to be 35 after the hour, and I can't do a thing about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I can manage my behavior, and I can manage my choices. And so the first thing is for pastors to take responsibility for their choices and the way and their behaviors so that they can create the bandwidth to grow. I think the second thing is, where a lot of people struggle, Phil, is they take this shotgun approach to growth. They read, they listen to this podcast and they read the latest Carey Nieuwhof book, or they pick up somebody's blog and they're like, oh wow, I really need to do that. So many of our churches are polluted with what I call random acts of improvement. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're grabbing that, instead of saying, hey, here's where we want to go, and these are the tools that we need to get there. I just said a lot, so go ahead and respond.
We got a long time to talk.
I'm just
listen.
Can we sign up for a personal session?
I love that random acts of. I think this is a little bit even what Russell was talking about in his session is the real intentionality of what's the goal and where are we going. It's not just a shotgun approach. It's not just It's not a smorgasbord of whatever we're doing, because it seems like you just don't get anywhere. You're kind of just everything you hit is just shallow. There's no real depth of kind of transformation,
and it can be so easily discouraging because even in that whole idea of like unfocused growth, right? These like random acts of improvements. The discouraging thing is you really are trying, and you're going to get almost no fruit from it. So it's not only that you're not improving. You're not just not improving. You're getting discouraged because the effort isn't going to the fruit you want it to.
Lyle, I'm moved by the quote that you quoted. So you didn't say it, but I'm just going to tell everyone Lyle always says.
Yeah.
That character is most deeply revealed by the truth that we can hear.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear from you regarding the kind of culture that allows leaders to hear truth. One of the things we're talking about all the time is the fallout of many of our heroes and pastors and leaders, moral failures, untouchable leaders, pastors we looked up to that had secrets, that somehow had cultures around them that perpetuated a culture that either couldn't speak truth to them or thought somehow they were beyond the need to hear truth from a culture. And so one of the passions we carry is cultivating healthy cultures where we actually can hear truth.
That's it.
Where we're submitted to each other. But as a father, I guess I'm asking you as a father, because we're longing for fathers and mothers that are actually leading this way, that never outgrow. We're talking about growth, that never outgrow the need to be submitted to other people that can speak into them.
And what's the culture that would somehow?
That's right.
Yeah. What's
That's
the
right.
culture that's created that doesn't allow or hinders leaders from hearing truth?
Well, Banning, there's one thing there that I'd push back a little bit, and that's on a lot of pastors really set themselves up for some failure and frustration when they say, we want to create a culture of truth. Because let's be honest, not everybody's earned the right to speak truth into my life.
Okay.
When I planted, I preached every Sunday for 5 years, Nate, and I had one guy that would come up every Sunday afterwards and be like,
"We know him.
Good message, Pastor. I only disagreed with 3 of your points."
Yes, I know that guy.
I only made 3 points.
Yeah, he moved to Reading. I told him there's a great new church in Reading.
It's the same guy. He showed up. He's been here ever since.
But so I mean, here's probably the most significant thing I think I could share with those that are listening and the 3 of you. Culture is the behaviors that you teach and that you tolerate and that you celebrate. So as a leader, the culture I want to create around me and our team is based on 5 voices. So the first voice that you need in your life, Nate, is a truth teller. And so there, we need to cultivate men and women into our life that are going to say things that we don't want to hear and ask us questions that we're not comfortable answering. I travel now. I'm out about 160 to 180 nights a year. One of my truth tellers is a former Major League Baseball coach who saw men wreck their lives on the road. So he'll randomly call me and be like, hey, have you spent any money your wife doesn't know about? Does your wife still have every password? Have you looked at a woman longer than you should have? You know, and I push back on him like, I'm the most married man in the world, Mike, leave me alone. And he's like, I want to keep it that way. I mean, that's the goal of a truth teller. They will make you uncomfortable. Banning knows I have a background as a college basketball coach. I used to smile at my players every day and say, I have a high tolerance for your pain. Your discomfort causes me no discomfort at all, because I was their coach and I was their truth teller. So the first person you need is a truth teller. The second person, Phil, we need are teachers. There are people smarter than us. There are people that are further down the road than us that we can learn from. Again, stupid things that smart people say. Experience is the best teacher. That's nonsense. Experience is a great teacher, but it's expensive. Right, Banning? Every time you've had to learn something the hard way, it's cost you time or money or a relationship. That's not the best teacher. The best teacher is somebody else's experience. Banning has learned some things the hard way. Now let's learn from Banning. So I don't have to go through that pain. So we need truth tellers, we need teachers. The third thing that pastors do not have, I call them trustees. Now we have elders, we have deacons, but a trustee is somebody that you can have a confidential, candid conversation with, that you share your ideas, your fears, your dreams with them. And they listen, they may counsel you, but you know it's going to stay confidential. I mean, Banning, you didn't need to go to a mentor the other day when you were having a hard time. You needed to go to a trustee and just say, I need to bare my heart with you for just a few minutes, and then I'll be okay. The fourth person we need are Timothys. We need to know who's coming next. Who are we pouring into? Because one of the things that really gobbles up a pastor is they reach the lid of their capacity and they've shared nothing with anybody else. And so it's not delegating, it's truly raising up other leaders around them. Barna just released their latest study for pastors. How's this for a scary statistic? 73% of the pastors they interviewed said they want to grow. Individual pastors saying growth is a priority for me. Of that same 73%, 11% said growing others is a priority. So, I mean, Phil, if you're part of that statistic, you're saying, I love to grow, I want to grow, I have a coach, but you're not giving any of that to anybody else on your team. Again, sending them to battle with butter knife. So trustees, teachers, truth tellers, Timothys, and the last thing we all need are tank fillers. We need encouragers. We need people that can speak love and encouragement and life into us. Man. And that doesn't mean that we're weak. Deuteronomy 3:28, the Lord tells Moses, go commission Joshua, strengthen and encourage him. Joshua was not weak. He had just gone into the promised land and said, let's go. But the Lord still commanded Moses to encourage him. So we need to know who our tank fillers are.
Let me ask this real quick, and I think you guys would be in this boat. One of the hardest things that I've encountered is when it really gets to a point where somehow the team around me is going to give me feedback about how my behavior has affected them. And somehow, and the painful times is when we just didn't seem to have a culture where people was comfortable or whatever it was with telling me the truth about above me, below me, beside me, about how my behavior was affecting them, how my behavior was impacting the environment. And I think I'm around leaders where they're either unaware, there's just not somehow a culture where people can come and tell them the truth of how they're experiencing them. And then in my case, maybe they do, and I'm just not listening, or I dismiss it, or I diminish it, or I just whatever. I don't know. Lyle, when you're working with pastors, when you're working with church staffs, I'm assuming you are, but are you running into situations, especially when you're at the top, all of a sudden people's paychecks are connected to you or whatever else? I'm assuming you run into situations where pastors that are in charge are just not getting feedback or truth tellers about how their behaviors, and so then the staff leaves. Here's the feedback I have. I'm going somewhere else. What would you say around that? Around how do we make sure as pastors, as leaders, that we don't just diminish this stuff, but that we're actually become aware of the impact of our behaviors on people and in the environment?
You guys have used the word culture quite a bit. Banning, first off, is I hate the word feedback. I think it's an emotionally charged word. I mean, everybody that listens to this would agree when somebody says, "Hey, can I give you some feedback?" It probably doesn't end well for you. You don't leave feeling great.
Can I give you some feedback? You're awesome.
Hey, listen.
You're awesome.
I just need you to be a tank filler right now. Listen, I don't need a trustee. I don't need a Timothy. I don't need a truth teller. I just need a tank filler today.
Every time I've got some feedback on your sermon. It was awesome. All right, keep going.
I'll give you feedback.
Feedback. Sorry, keep going, Lyle. Feedback.
So it's not a great word. So I would say two things. Number one, we have to be more intentional, Banning. When we hire somebody onto our team, we tell them this: in 30 days, we're going to have a conversation. It's going to be one of the most candid conversations you've ever had. And we're going to talk about things that you're doing really, really well and things we'd like to see you do better. Better is a great word, because who's against better, right? So we're going to talk about that. But you're also going to tell me, as your leader, things I'm doing really well and things I can do better. And at 30 days, we're having a conversation. At 90 days, we're going to have an evaluation. And at 180 days, we're going to have a decision. But we put those benchmarks in the ground, so we start that culture very, very early. What happens in a lot of churches that we work with, they hire people and then they leave them on an island. And then about a year later, they're all frustrated, and then they hit them with about 10 or 12 things that person is doing wrong. For you as a leader, Banning, because I've seen it with your team respects you, your team adores you, your team really values your leadership. Are there things you could do better? Absolutely. So we always say, if you want a better answer, ask a better question.
That's a great
So instead of what feedback do you have for me, I mean, if you ask your team, what do I do that frustrates you? Tell me, go to your admin and say, what do I do that makes your job harder? Ask your core leadership team.
I don't want to know the answer. Keep going.
What could I do to make your job easier? When do you feel most valued by me? When have I made you feel devalued? I mean, those are phenomenal questions. At home, CJ, tell me one thing I could do to be a better husband.
Really Lyle, I think what's so amazing, and obviously you know this, right, because you're coaching people into this, but I think the significance of this is what it does is it takes feedback, and I agree, I hate that word, so I love that you hate that word, but it takes that concept, out of the realm of negative and problematic, and puts it into the environment of consistent and honoring, right? That there could be this place of going, hey, I want, because I think if I'm thinking about my staff, if I sat with my staff and go, hey, is there anything I'm doing that makes you feel dishonored? One, if I am, I'd like to know that. So one, I actually do want to know the question, but I'm presenting a place for them to give me thoughts in such an honoring way that they feel honored, and I think they'll respond back with a greater form of honor in truthfulness. And I think, so I'm just listening to you in the middle of this, and I want one point I want to make that's connected to this is, because I think it matters, because as Lyle's talking about these things, one of the things I think people love about this podcast is the fact that
everything.
They love everything about this podcast.
But outside of that,
but they love that we're really friends. And I want to say that we really are friends.
Yeah, we paddleboard together. That's
what
you're saying.
We have a text thread
authentically paddleboard.
That is not for the faint of heart.
Oh yeah,
we're on it. But I'm saying, because I'm looking at these things, the tank fillers, the Timothy, and we need these things. We are not all of these things to each other. But I think what happens is, the truth is, this relationship actually spurs us at times to see the things we're not having. We are some of these things for each other. And I think the reality is, most pastors don't have genuine places of relationship. And I just think, how do you even move towards those 5 things if you don't even have any form of brothers in your life? And so I just even want to comment that I think for me, good. Lyle, there's a connection in moving towards these 5 things, which are profound and every pastor needs. There's that place of where I want to continue to encourage pastors. You've got to have real, genuine, deep friendships.
That's right.
Banning, Nate, myself, we're honest with each other. We're sharing our struggles. We're sharing our struggles in our lives, our marriages, our children, our staffs. We're encouraging each other. We're speaking life into each other. It's friendships that's going every direction. And I think it's that kind of place where I now have a place to move towards a lot of these 5 things.
That's right.
That I think a lot of pastors don't even know how to, because they haven't even formed genuine relationships.
And pastors, it is your responsibility to cultivate these kinds of relationships around you.
Yes.
This isn't something that God does for you. Like, you're responsible to cultivate a culture where you can get what you need to grow. Couple thoughts, Lyle, thinking about this. The first is this. I love that you're talking about a structure, really the word is that makes this stuff safe. A rhythm and a structure. It's not going to happen in the hallways. It's not going to happen in the passing conversations. In fact, I've found as a pastor, when I'm just having conversations with my team in the hallways, it actually hurts more than helps. So there's something about a structure that creates a safety for these brilliant questions. Another thought I had, if I could share this, as I'm hearing you talk about this, I'm grieving a bit. I'm a bit frustrated. I'm grieving the fact that very few fathers and spiritual parents in my life have shown me this.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that pastors and leaders that I served with for years, my own dad, spiritual moms and dads in my life that weren't able to ask questions. They weren't able to open themselves up to say, how am I doing? Or how am I encouraging you? Or are there places that I could grow in this? And I think there's a part of me that's just grieving that as I hear. I want to become that kind of father. I want to become that kind of leader. But there's maybe something to grieve that most of us, well, I'm guessing most of us didn't actually get that. We weren't formed in environments where our parents or the pastors we served with could actually open themselves at that level.
Do you find, Lyle, with this question that baby boomers and Gen X and then into millennials, I'm assuming as you're working with all of them, it's so different. Would you find, like, with baby boomers, nobody was asking them, like, how you doing? How you doing internally? Like, what are you talking about? We just went to war and I work at a factory to provide for my family. Like, what do you mean? How am I doing have to do with anything? Like, legitimately, do you kind of encounter that it's at different levels, different ages, a little bit different with some of this stuff?
With pastors specifically, Banning, I think it's surprisingly consistent. Because I think it's the hardest leadership job on the planet, being a pastor, because not only are you the boss, you're usually a friend. All churches want to get together and do life together. Nate, you mentioned being a church planner. There's this idea that everybody's got to get to the finish line with me. A football coach in the NFL never has that paradigm. He's like, look, do your job or I'll cut you and I'll go draft somebody else. But in ministry, we think we're going to take everybody to the finish line.
That's profound.
And so now I'm your boss. I got to get you to the finish line with me because our families are together. I'm also your shepherd. I mean, all of that gets so complex. So what I would say is, no wonder a pastor, if somebody says, how are you doing? They're going to go, hey, I'm good. I'm solid. Because, I mean, do they really feel safe enough to go, no, I'm not doing great? And that's where, what you guys just said, you've got to go and cultivate those relationships. But here's the other thing around this whole idea of growth and feedback. It doesn't always have to be 3 guys in black shirts in a dark room having a deep conversation to grow. My admin, so Phil,
it's really good.
My admin, I say, what do I do that frustrates you? And she says, you make decisions and don't communicate them to me. Like, I need to know when you say yes to something. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. So here's the deal. I mean, her feedback to me when I do that is I get a hand to the forehead emoji on my phone, right? And I'm like, oh, drop the ball again. Forgot to tell Heather. She'll be like, didn't know you told people you'd be in Colorado next weekend. And I'm like, okay, thank you, right? That's feedback. I dropped the ball again. And like, we joke about, hey, I haven't had an emoji in a while. But it's another way for me to help her, right? Because, Nate, one of the things we believe is nobody wants to be average. So she wants to serve me in an extraordinary way. She's bought into this mission. So her giving me feedback helps me help her, right? I mean, we watch the Jerry Maguire, Cuba Gooding Jr. thing about twice a year, just as a reminder. This is me out here for you. Help me help you.
Show me the money, Lyle. Show me the money.
But we've again around growth. I think growth is an exciting thing. I think growth can be a fun thing. My process statement for my life is I want to do hard things with people I really care about and have fun doing it. So my own children, Banning, who you've met them both, but. One of the ways that we would give each other feedback sometimes, to apologize, I'd walk up to one of my children if I blew it, and I'd say, hey, that wasn't my best parenting moment. And then they'd smile and go, but Daddy, it wasn't your worst. So, but it was a way to acknowledge, hey, I'm owning this. I've got to do it better. But it doesn't have to always be, this deep, dark, there's times to have a very serious conversation, but there's also this idea of, hey, let's have a free flow exchange of ideas and how can we continue to grow?
Your children are awesome, by the way. We'll have a counseling session real quick. So what happens with leaders? Like, I think I'm a pretty passionate guy to grow. I want to grow. I want to get better. I want to look at the things that are my constraints. But also, I find in this season, and I think that you don't have to be prophetic to understand this, is just emotionally exhausted. You just spent the last 18, 19 months, whenever you're watching it, whenever we release this, but it's just like, it's like every day there's some decision I have to make. It's a complicated decision. It's a layered decision. It's a decision that's a moving target because maybe I'm going to get new information tomorrow that I didn't have today. The amount of things that we planned, we're like, we're opening up now. And then the next day I got new information. I'm like, just kidding, we're not. Or just you're having to make decisions around health and safety, and then whatever decision I make, somebody somewhere is not happy with it. So I'm saying all that not to feel sorry for ourselves or pat ourselves on the back. This is what we do, and the Lord's been extremely faithful to us in the midst of it. But you begin to feel, I'm just tired. You're just like, I feel emotionally tired. So all of a sudden, a growth conversation comes up, and you're like. And the problem is when I get tired, like I'm not at my best. So all of a sudden my behaviors are like even worse. For me, I just go internal. People don't really know what's going on. Like the visionary side of me isn't popping out with our team, and they're like out there drowning, kind of like, what's going on around here? So I get tired. My behaviors now all of a sudden are affecting people even more negatively because I'm not even managing them at the level I should. But then to get to go like, okay, I got to grow. Man, that sounds like a lot of work. And Going to get. We're not getting feedback now. What are we getting? We're getting something else. Truth. So then going. Hey, tell me how I'm making your life harder. Like, I really need you to tell me that I'm not making your life harder. Right. But I am making your life harder. I know I am, but I just, and maybe I need to up my level. Maybe I need to up my lid. Maybe I need to get like a little, but no, I'm like, I got to come to you, and now I got to say, help me understand how I'm making your life harder in the midst of my hardest year ever, by the way.
No, totally.
What do you do? Have you guys been there?
Yeah,
Is it just me?
For me, because Lyle, I want to hear you. I mean, I was about a month ago, had a conversation with a leader, and they were frustrated that I had missed some things. And in my mind, I was just like, yeah, but you haven't been called a Marxist. You haven't had those emails of people leaving because you right now aren't requiring masks. You haven't had those people like. Can I just have a little bit of grace?
I hope you didn't say that.
There was no, I didn't. But there was that thing inside of me that goes, oh, you don't see the uniqueness of why I'm not at my best. I'm not at my best because I'm taking shots everywhere. And I knew that wasn't the right thing.
Immediately that goes, your needs are not valid because I've had a hard time.
I knew coming at them from that was not the right thing.
Your needs don't matter at all.
But that voice was there. And it was the voice of tiredness, weariness.
So what do you do with leaders who just either one feel stuck, like, hey, I've consistently got this feedback and I seem to continually get in this ditch. So for whatever reason, I'm in this ditch and they just want to go, this is just who I am. I'm a high D, I'm an 8. This is just who I am. So what do you do with people that just feel stuck because they're like, it doesn't seem to be changing, or they're just emotionally tired and all of this just sounds exhausting?
Yeah. Banning, all of that is very, very, very real. So a couple of things. First off is one of the tools that we teach is called reframing. One of the things that's really helped me the last 18 months is this simple statement. We raised our children teaching them that money and alcohol just make people more of what they already were, right? I mean, you've got an angry person and they start drinking. Now they're angry and they're drunk, but they're really angry. You get somebody who's generous and they win the lottery, Banning, and they're amazingly generous. Well, a crisis does the exact same thing. So, one of the things that I've done to reframe is I just have to stop being surprised, because critical people are going to be more critical because of the pandemic. Judgmental people, more judgmental. Phil, needy people, guess what the pandemic made them? A little more needy. Right, so one of our mottos in my home and on our team is stop being surprised. It's like playing golf with a 23 handicapper and he's upset that he sliced it. You're a 23 handicap for a reason.
That's heartless.
So
that's true, but heartless.
Surprised. The second thing is this, and we really have to embrace this, but as leaders, we cannot be responsible for the response of another person. We're only responsible for the decisions we make, the way we treat people, the stewardship of our time, people, and resources. We can't be responsible for their responses. Now, all that said, Banning, one of the things that a great tool for all the leaders that are listening is we can't get into that ditch, right? I mean, we have to know these two things. Number one, what are the indicators that your gas light is on or that your tank is starting to empty? And that's a self-awareness tool that all of us need to sharpen. I know these two things. When my tank starts to get empty, two things happen. Number one, my exercise and eating disciplines go out the door. When I'm in a Taco Bell drive-up, my tank is empty. It's got to get empty, right? When I'm going to Whataburger twice a day in Texas, that's a problem. The other thing is, and I'm not proud of this as a pastor, but Banning knows I played for a crazy man when I played in college, and I used to say, I don't know if my college coach invented profanity or just perfected it. But I heard those words every day for 4 years. They're in me. And when they come out, right, either I think them or I say them, that is like a red flag. Like, Lyle, your gaslight is not on, it's flashing on. So number one, what are the things that are indicators that you whether it's you run out of patience, or some pastors just disappear. They just run. They just isolate, which is the worst place to be. The second thing we've got to know is not just, Nate, who fills our tank, but what fills our tank. And we have to take responsibility then to protect time and resources to go do that. Some people are filled by being around other people. Some people, their tank is filled by being around certain people or doing certain activities. I love wide open spaces. I live in South Central Texas. I get a full tank by going for a walk, going for a run, going to play 18 holes of golf by myself at the most remote golf course in my county, because I love being alone with the Lord in wide open spaces. So I know that. Other people would be like, kill me now. Go for a walk, where there are copperheads and armadillos. That sounds miserable. For me, it's the most amazing thing. Again, we have to know that and try to keep ourselves out of those ditches. And maybe it's a little late. The other thing I would say, Banning, with regard to growth is this: manage your expectations. I consider myself a reader. I can't tell you the last time I read a book cover to cover that wasn't written by Banning. I mean, I'll just tell you. So, I'm a reader. I read chapters. I'll read parts of books. So I don't put the pressure on me. I need to finish that book. You guys and I know there's some great Christian authors that write amazing 100-page books. The problem is, to get them published, they have to write 300 pages. So they say the same thing from page 101 to page 300. And I'm like, okay, I got it. I read the first 100 pages and they were amazing. You're starting to repeat yourself. I'm good now. So, you can be a reader. You don't have to listen to every single podcast to be a well-informed pastor. Pick one or two and stay with them for a season. And I mean, obviously, y'all's need to be one of them. Yeah. But it's that manage. I mean, the fittest guy I know, here's his workout program: sweat every day. That's it. Some days he goes to CrossFit and kills it. Some days he doesn't feel like it. He goes for a walk. Sometimes he just rides his bike around the block for 40 minutes or 20 minutes. But he sweats every day. And that's how, growth is just a little bit. Have one conversation. Read one proverb. I mean, one of my favorite routines, I read one proverb every single morning because wisdom is so important. So there's a whole lot there to unpack. I'm sorry, but I care passionately about pastors, and I hate it when they're in the ditch because I don't think they need to be there.
Yeah. Lyle had this season about 5 years ago where I emotionally crashed. It took me months to figure out what was happening in me because I didn't know what anxiety felt like. I didn't know what depression felt like. But as you talked about the different ways pastors respond to what's happening internally, I remember avoiding people for almost half a year. I would show up at the church and I would come in the back door. I didn't want to see people. I would sneak into my office and I didn't know what was happening. And I had fried my adrenal glands. And it took about 3 years to recover. But I remember something happened. It took me months. I was embarrassed. I loved to be a strong leader and didn't really want to, show weakness to my team. But something happened when I could bring my team into the weakness. When I could be honest about the pain. Banning, as you're talking about being exhausted, I couldn't think straight. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't lead. I was getting angry quickly. But something happened when I could sit with my team and go, guys, I'm not doing well. and I can't lead you the way that I want to right now. I can't think straight. Everything in me wants to be strong for you, but I can't. And in that season, I remember the grace the team extended me. I remember it was almost as if God was pulling leadership out of them that they didn't know they had. And my team, they say to me this day, we love this Nate better than any version of Nate.
Vulnerable Nate.
Weak Nate. And so what I thought would be embarrassing to my team, so there's something I think for pastors that are exhausted. We can't hide this from our teams. There's got to be a sense that we can be honest and vulnerable, and create a kind of culture where we can come and go, hey, listen, and watch God begin to actually grow our team in seasons when we feel as if we don't have what it takes.
Yeah, that's good.
Nate, one of the beautiful things you just said there, in The Art of War, Sun Tzu says, there's no disgrace in retreat if it is to fight again. And, I'm waiting. I mean, I've been working with pastors for 15 years now. I'm waiting for a pastor when I say, so what are your priorities? I'm just waiting for one to go, you know what? We're going to preach the gospel every Sunday, and we're going to love on our people. And we're not adding any new programs. We're not doing any new initiatives. We're not trying to plant campuses this year. We almost see that as a defeat. But think about it. We're the only animals that multitask. Every other animal, they sprint and then they rest, right? I mean, you don't see a mama lion chasing a gazelle trying to nurse her babies because she's multitasking. A lion chases and kills only what it needs to eat. But, like we plant an amazing church in our community, and our first thought is, what else? We've just killed this gazelle, let's go chase another one. That's crazy. So, again, it's this idea of aligning yourself towards your desired outcomes, not what you think everybody else needs to think. Words every pastor needs to know are no, not yet, not now, or not me. Like that right there, Nate, will keep a third of the pastors out of counseling, right? And out of some secret hidden lifestyle, if they could just learn to say no, not yet, not now. I mean, maybe it's a great idea, but not now. That's right. And not me.
Lyle's so good. Listen, wow. Listen. I'm gonna before we end, we just have a few more minutes. I want to just quickly change gears, and I want to ask you, people. I've been around you, and so know that you're a really great communicator. You're an intentional communicator. You're deliberate. You're clear. You're concise. Everything you do is solid. You for years, maybe still now, was actually working in secular environment, in corporate kind of America, doing training. So you're not cracking open scripture. You're not using your best preacher joke. This type of stuff. What would you tell pastors from a communication standpoint? I'm not sure we sent you any questions on a run sheet. So just to be fair, I was about to say I didn't give you this question beforehand. I'm not sure I gave you any questions. But what would you tell preachers? So pastors that are communicating, preaching, something that you have had to learn in the corporate world.
That's a great question.
That you wish they knew and implemented in the church world when it comes to communication. Is there something that you would think, as I throw that question at you, is there something that comes to mind? If not, we can edit. This is the beauty. This is the beauty of podcasts. We can stop and edit if not. But honestly, is there something that comes to mind because you've been in both of those worlds and you're sitting and you're not only preaching the church too, but you're actually sitting underneath these pastors that are preaching?
Yeah, Banning, there 3 things come immediately to mind. A lot of people on their desk have that big nameplate that faces out and tells everybody who they are. The sign I'd like to be on the backside of that nameplate that faces the leader, the pastor, the communicator that they see every day would say these 2 things. Number 1, what's easy and obvious to you is not easy and obvious to other people. You guys live in the Word. We speak this church language sometimes. But we have to remember that when people walk in, Nate, to hear you preach, number one, they haven't been thinking about it all week long. Number two, they may have anxiety. They might have been arguing with a kid, have that ice cold moment with your spouse right when they walk into church.
Yeah.
Just remember, what's easy and obvious to you
really
isn't
good.
easy and obvious to others. And so the second part of that is teaching is not telling. Teaching is not telling. Probably the best thing I ever learned about communication, Banning, is that the mind thinks in pictures. And we can never forget that, right? I mean, you know this. You've been a basketball coach. You're up by 3, right? And you're on defense, and the clock's running out. And if you start yelling to your team, don't foul, don't foul, don't foul, almost always what happens?
Yeah, they foul. But that's because I was coaching 7th grade girls. But
they foul, right? You've got a 5-year-old and they're carrying a glass of chocolate milk across the kitchen. You're like, careful, don't spill that. And all of a sudden it's all over the floor. The mind thinks in pictures. So the other thing I would say to communicators is speak in word pictures. Paint a picture for them. And it's more than just a sermon illustration. Paint a picture for them. The last thing, Banning, that I learned in the corporate space, because, I've trained on Las Vegas Boulevard, Wall Street, Century in Hollywood, whatever. I don't have to know their world to be relevant. I don't have to speak, Wall Street. I don't have to speak gaming on Las Vegas Boulevard. I earn credibility when I walk in the room by the way I treat them, and when I step up and I'm prepared and I know what I'm talking about. That's what builds credibility and influence. So you don't have to be a subject matter on everything. Everything doesn't have to be relevant to their real world. I think you used to be a youth pastor. I think I used to be a youth pastor. I think I could still go preach to 15-year-olds. Now, I can't, the movies I would reference, they've never seen, but I still think I can bring a compelling message because I know what I'm talking about. I may not understand their world at all.
No, you just definitely would need the black shirt for that.
You would.
The black shirt would translate to 15-year-olds.
The black shirt, 2 sizes too small is what seems to translate.
Or 2 sizes too big these days.
That's what it is.
Too small
really?
or too big.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's either skinny or baggy.
2 sizes either way.
You got to stay on top of these things. Lyle, man, I sure appreciate you taking time with us. How do people, if people want to see what you are about, if people want to get a hold of the resources, the training, just look into this type of stuff, go deeper with you, where do they go? What do they do?
Our website, Integrus, integrus.org, or they can reach out to me at lyle@integrus.org, or on Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Lead with Lyle. I don't post my food or, walking my dog, but about 4 or 5 times a week, I call them tweets or tattoos, just little leadership nuggets, post them, really relevant, as a source of great encouragement and equipping for our leaders.
Yep.
So, or I'll be in Atlanta, Georgia with Phil, or Reading with Nate very, very soon.
Very soon.
Let's go.
I want to hang out with these guys.
Let's
Yes,
go.
you will.
Well, Phil really needs you.
Yeah, Phil really.
In fact, we're going to extend a hand to Phil right now.
Phil is just all defensive, like his church has never been better. What's your problem? Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Always good to have you. Hopefully, you're taking notes, you're listening to it again, and you're really starting to implement this stuff. This is what I'm convinced of. We got to not just listen to podcasts. We have to sit down, meditate on this stuff, get plans of action around it. I mean, there are things that I'm hearing going, oh, man, I need to do something about that. Oh, man, I need to do something about that. Then we got to put a plan of action on this thing. Let's implement this thing. Let's, just actually move towards this. It's not just about listening to it. It's actually about figuring out, well, how do I go implement this into my life?
I'm sitting with my team this week saying, I need you all to tell me everything.
No, I literally
everything that you haven't told me. How have I frustrated you? How have I failed you? I need it all out all at once.
Okay.
Because
have fun with
I
that.
literally have multiple things I want to follow through on just from listening to this. And I would just say, like you said, to anybody listening to this, please do something.
Yeah.
Do something.
That's the only time it has power. So,
Banning, let me give you a word picture. So here's two great questions you can ask yourself and ask your teams. What animal would your behavior point to right now? What animal are you? And then what animal do you want to be? So one of my coaching sessions this morning, the guy says, I'm an Australian sheepdog. I'm all over the place. I'm chasing everything. I want to be a bloodhound. I want to get on a trail. I want to be more focused, less distracted. I want to stay the course. So what animal are you, right? I mean, Banning.
I'm a kitty cat. I'm just a cute little kitty cat.
You want to be a kitty cat.
Hey, Banning, let's see. We'll give a good one for Banning. Banning, you are, well, no, gorilla probably is not.
No, I'm not. Here's what I am in this season. I'm that animal that burrows into a hole somewhere. I'm the animal that just burrows into a hole somewhere. Well, there's a nuclear holocaust happening.
The bird with the head in the ground.
I just go down. That's what happens.
Well, here's what you are, Banning. You're a groundhog, and so you bury yourself. But every time you come out, everybody's looking at you because they think that where you are and when you show up is an indicator of, are we okay? Are we going to make it through this? And so you've got to come with some passion and some zeal and some direction, even though you've been underground and you don't even know which way the sun is pointing.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to be done with this
Groundhog
podcast.
Day.
There it is.
Groundhog Day. I'm watching that film tonight.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Excited to have you. If you haven't listened to the other episodes, make sure you go and get them in order, please. There's an order in this world that's supposed to be followed, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So go get that. You can also check out season 1. And great to have all of you with us. We'll be back.